Testing. Good morning. Welcome to this New Thought Aloha morning. Today's all about inspiration. Our musical minister today was provided by Pandora. Thank, Thanks to the internet. My name is Stephen Goss, and I'm the guide for facilitating the order of today's happenings. Thank you so much for showing up and being here and now. Uh, Today's a special service on inspiration. It's all about inspiration, and some of our members are going to share how some historical figures in history inspired them. I'd like to start out with a reading from the Science of Mind magazine by our wonderful volunteer, Candy. And she's coming right up. You can use this mic. I think it's
Today's reading is about the patterning intelligence. Earth is crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. By Elizabeth Barrett Browning, of course. There's a perfect pattern, and we believe in it. And the perfect pattern is where we are and not somewhere else. It is already within us. This is the divine incarnation, the involution. You and I had nothing to do with it, in my estimation, and I hope you will understand when I say that I think God had nothing to do with it. If I said God created the pattern, I would be saying God created God. And if God created God, what created the thing that made it possible for God to create God? It is known in all logic and reason and common sense that when you arrive at an ultimate, you must accept its nature. It is the nature of reality, that it consists in infinite compulsion, infinite intelligence, infinite love, infinite self-givingness. It must create, having limitless desire to project itself and come into the fruition of experiencing itself. It has no frustration and no inhibition. These are taken from seminar lectures. Ernest maintained that God as a transcendent reality is the patterning intelligence and not a planning one. This liberates God from the role of parental oversight and all the drama of rules, obedience, estrangement, and reconciliation that come with human relationships. Our calling God Mother, Father may be a convenient handle, but it is not a description. There really is no description, since to describe anything requires being apart from it. But infinite God infuses everything. However, we can discover how God patterns by looking at the last thing created for us and through us. How many hands did it pass through on its way here? Whose choices had to overlap and intersect in such perfect precision? I'll read our affirmation and then we'll read it again together. Today, I am guided to know what to do in every circumstance. Today, I am guided to know what to do in every circumstance. Thank you.
Thanks, Candy. Well, today's service is all about inspiration. So, really, what does the word inspiration mean, especially to you? Um, One definition is to breathe, to suck air into your lungs so you can stay alive. That's you inspire oxygen. Another one is influencing others in a positive or divine manner. But what does inspiration actually feel like? Rather than think about it in words, how does it feel? So now we're going to do a short prayer or a attitude adjustment. Um, and is it not true that every time we get a glimpse of something that feels like a divine reality, like the sunset, or listening to the waves crash, there's something that feels inspiring. So we're going to try to get in touch with that feeling. I'm going to read a very short poem from a famous historical poet and see how what inspiration you feel from his words. It goes like this. This being human is a guest house. Every morning is a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as a unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Treat each guest honorably. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Just take a moment now in silence to, is it inspiring? Does it make any sense to you? Welcome back to this beautiful day, this inspirational event. I hope you're all still inspiring, at least with air, so you all survive today. Something about New Thought. First, I'd like to ask, are there any new people here today? I know we have at least one victim. Would you like to tell us y- your name, which I already know, but Jamie. Oh, great. Right. She's been here since May, and was inspired by Joan Ocean to come here. That's perfect. Is this too, Jeff, is this too much pop on the, is it too close? A little? Okay, is that better? Um, where am I? Are there any other people here for the first time? Oh, all right. Well, you're all welcome. Now we have a time, a little bit about New Thought. I got lost there. Um, it's, I don't like to talk about the history of New Thought, about the building and how long it's been here. And what's that? We have our roots in science of mind. And what is New Thought? It's just an old thought, a way of feeling connected, feeling inspired. And New Thought is about coming here and meeting and reminding each other of what's happiness is and what makes it important. It's a group effort. That's New Thought. Does anybody have any miracles and ordinaries to share today? Something that may have inspired you lately? If you do, just come on up to and use the mic here. And yeah, come on up. Okay. I could be the only one with a. So, as I kind of shared it's confusing. I think I'll use this one. Shared a little bit earlier from Rumi. Actually, somebody gave me a book by Hafiz, the other Persian poet, this summer, and I really got into it. Wow, this is amazing! You know, it's just talk about inspiring. It's so sublime. His words. Anyways, I had read this and I was all stoked up about it. And I spent the summer in Colorado, in Aspen, and I went on a bike ride in a beautiful sunny day down along this path next to the river. The sun was out, the birds were singing, everything was green, and it was warm. And I stopped in a grassy park about a mile away, and the sun was reflecting off the ripples in the river and the sound of the water. It was just enchanting. So I sat down and I was like in this reverie about that. And then I thought, wow, this inspires me to write a poem. So I did. I dictated a poem into my phone and I was pretty satisfied with it. And I was sitting there and all of a sudden I heard like some footsteps behind me. And I turned around and there was like 5 people there. And they all had dark skin. And they were all smiling. And they said, oh, yeah, well, you know, the guy said, we didn't mean to bother you. You know, this is, I said, oh, no, that's no problem. I was just enjoying this incredible beauty. In fact, and I don't know why I said it, I was then inspired by this Persian poet. And I think I pronounced it Hafiz instead of Hafiz. And they kind of all looked at me and went, oh, no, it's not Hafiz, it's Hafiz. We're all from Persia, or, you know, which is now Iraq. And it was just making that connection, you know, solidifying that feeling of reverie, like it's all connected, to have them show up at that time. And because they were also, you know, shared their take on it, like how it was such an important part of their culture, what was poetry and Rumi. And Hafiz. And so I was just, to me, it was like, wow, I could just, it was what I call a miracle in my life. Thank you for listening. Anybody else? Rob, I'll make you use the mic. Please.
I haven't shared for a long time because I've trouble speaking. I hope you're tolerant and patient. I form words in my mind, and on the way out, I'll lose it. I lost the word.
Remember to stay focused on the microphone.
Yeah, I was stay focused. But part of my two anyway, I think I'm going to say what I wanted to say. Gerling and Jeff inspired me to look up the Buddha. And I realized that I wanted to learn what the Buddha said. Again, I thought I knew it. But there are 4 noble truths. And the Eightfold Path is the Dharma Chakra. There are 7 chakras, The Dharma Chakra is an interesting chakra because you are faced with judgment from moment to moment, and your judgment is right or wrong. That's simple. And the Eightfold Path is right, left, right, the correct attitude, judgment. Shall I get mad? Shall I sulk? Shall I leave? Or attend New Thought with these inspiring people? Every one of you know what I'm talking about. Jatayu is my name. And Jatayu is in charge of Dharma, right and wrong. Dharma is an old Sanskrit word, and the Buddhist philosophy updated the Dharma thing, right and wrong. I'm miserable and I don't want to get out of bed and I feel like dying. No. That's wrong. Right is I'm gonna get out of bed and greet all these people of like spirituality, and I'm through.
Thank you, Rob, for it was a beautiful share by a beautiful brother. Inspiring. Well, now we're going to start the main part of our most inspiring service today. The first person to share will be Heather Rentals, and she'll be sharing with us well, let me back up a little. Inspiring Lives will be the theme for this Sunday at New Thought Center. The 3 members will share about their spiritual heroes. The focus will be on Ray, Mahatma Gandhi, and the American guru, Fred Rogers. Heather Reynolds, Pasha McGregor, and Aaron Peoples will be sharing this. And like I said, we're going to start with Heather. And she's going to be sharing on Fatima Barangi, something like that. Anyways, later known as Tahara, the Pure One. And that was, she lived from 1817 to 1852. She was a religious reformer honored by the Bahia faith, a poet, social activist. She repeatedly put herself in physical danger to stand up to the inequity and protest the treatment of women in Persia, which is now called Iran. She's remembered for her writings, her courageous life, and, not last, but her execution at the age of 35. Heather?
Thank you. Is this one on? Should be on. Testing, testing. Testing. Is this one on? Can everybody hear me? All right. It's a privilege this morning to share with you one of my heroines, one of the most inspiring people in my life. She became known as Tahirih, the Pure One, in Iran about 150 years ago or so. Not quite that long. Yeah. Anyway, Tahirih was born in Persia, and she was born the name Fatima because she was born into a prestigious, prominent Muslim family. Her father was high clergy. Her mother was educated. Her aunt was educated, and she didn't want for anything except to be treated like the boys. She discovered early that girls were not supposed to be educated. And she discovered that this was her passion, and she would read every book in her father's library growing up. And he would allow her to hide behind the curtain during classes that he was giving in their home, and even in the mosque, would allow her to listen and would allow her, as long as she didn't ask any questions and nobody knew she was there. It worked for a while. And then she discovered that she wanted to argue just like the boys were doing, the men. And by the age of 13 or 14, she had become quite a prodigy, a scholar, and many of the men did not want to go head to head with her on religious, theological conversation, or even poetry, or all of the incredible richness of the Shiite Muslim religious knowing of the Quran and all of the books, even of Greek mythology, and the library was extensive. Oh, things are flying away. So she grew up this way, and at 13, 14, like all good Muslim girls, she was arranged to have a marriage. Thank you. Thank you so much. And so she married, and she had 3 children. And she continued her studies, although her traditional husband was not interested in her doing anything other than being a good Muslim wife. So when she was invited to become a student and then became the teacher by a very prominent leader, spiritual clergy leader at the time, she decided to go follow that dream. She invited her husband and her children to come with her, but they refused. And so she went anyway. Now, this is unheard of for a woman to be educated, eloquent speaker, an incredible poet, and to know more than most of the men in her time and day, because she had read every book in her father's library and knew how to share it with others. She became famous, not just for her beauty, but for her eloquence and her ability to break all the taboos and rules at the time that were proper The name Tahare means pure one. And that name was given to her to protect her so that people wouldn't think that she was not proper or not pure and therefore beyond reproach, which allowed her to have audience. Even the king, the Shah of Iran, asked for her hand in marriage, and she refused him because she didn't want his palaces, as she put it. She didn't want his riches. She was on a spiritual path, and she was creating a brand new faith, the Baha'i faith, with many others. Thousands and thousands of people were converting to a new faith that was about giving up the past, giving up traditions that were not serving humanity, and believing in a new future where women and men would be equal, where prejudice of any colored skin would be eliminated, where prejudice of different religions would be eliminated, where we would see ourselves as one human family under God, and that God was often giving us prophets and messengers to bring us the beauty of our remembrance of who we are and our remembrance of who we are to each other, the golden rule, the thread that goes through all great religions, and honoring all of that. But that with each new prophet or messenger, about every 1,000 years for humanity's sake, in different cultures at different times, God would give new social rules. And the new social rules were pretty radical for over 100 years ago in Iran, even today. You might have noticed on the news. Why I'm so inspired to talk about her right now is because the women in Iran are taking off their hijab. They're taking off their head coverings. So imagine going through life with your head covered and not being allowed to take it off for fear of being imprisoned and or death. Just as Mahsa Amini was killed just a few weeks ago for having some hair showing in Iran. And when she was beaten and killed, the people rose up. This was only in the last couple of weeks where women are taking off their hijab in public and burning them in the streets. And this hasn't happened since 2017 when 29 women were imprisoned for doing so. Well, it is illegal, even in Tahare's day, to take your veil off. Now, back then you had to veil your face as well, not just your hair. And the reason for this is because God forbid the beauty of a woman, the beauty of her hair, the beauty of her body showing anywhere would be such a temptation to men, they couldn't possibly control themselves. So let's blame the women for being the temptress and cover her up as quickly as possible in hopes that we never cause a man to sin or do something improper. So she knew that this was absurd. And she, at the age of 31, at a convention, with all surrounded by men, she decided to remove her veil in public, knowing that this act would be punishable by death. And she did it anyway. And she did it very courageously, taking off her veil in front of all of these men. It was so shocking for some of them that one of them slit his own throat to think that he had seen her face. And now she's sentenced to death, knowing that she had chosen her fate. She prepared herself in a beautiful white silk dress as if she was going to a wedding with her beloved creator, divine. And she perfumed herself with beautiful rose attar and let her hair down, flowing. For women to let their hair down and let it be seen is an act of freedom. And for women all around the world that we are human family with, I choose to let my hair down, and I feel so blessed that I can do so in a culture that doesn't stone me for it, that doesn't imprison me for it. Tahare was both of those, and she was killed for it. And when she was taken into the garden the night after praying and fasting and putting on her best, most beautiful outfit, going to her wedding day in a spiritual sense, and I've brought some rose oil, true rose oil from Bulgaria for you to pass around and have the experience of how she smelled in the garden that night. She asked to be strangled with her scarf, her silk scarf that matched her dress. And the men, the sober ones, they refused. They wouldn't kill her. But they found one drunk soldier who was willing. And so he took her life and threw her in the well and covered it with rocks. And Before she passed away, she said to the minister, the Persian minister at the time, she said, "You may kill me as soon as you like, but you will never stop the emancipation of women." And that was the act that she chose as her purpose for being in her life and what it was for. And I want to share one poem with you about her spiritual love for her beloved and her faith. She said, and she's speaking in the voice of God as if this is his command. "Behold, my resistless faith has once more become manifest. It is binding commandment and subduing verses. Cast off the garments of old laws, of outworn traditions. It is the binding commandment. Immerse yourself in the sea of my bounteousness. How long in this world rabid with passion and corruption will you remain so remote from your true purpose, so pitifully far? But from two letters, B and E, our faith has appeared again. You need only respond, from God, and to him shall we return." I shared with you Tahirih today and the removing of our veils, the equality of men and women as the future for humanity, as if we are a bird with two wings. The one wing, the feminine, the other wing, the masculine. And that as a broken winged bird, we have spent thousands of years wondering how to treat one another. And now if we can make those wings of equal power and equal possibility and equal potential, we may fly for the first time as humanity. I'm showing you a picture that is not actually Tahirih, but a rendition of what she probably looked like, since they did not do pictures back then, and also what her poetry looked like, and what it might have looked like on the day she took her veil off in front of the men.
Am I on? Yes. Thank you, Heather. I mean, that was inspiring for me. It's like, thank you. And next we have Pasha McGregor will be sharing with us on Mahatma Gandhi, who was with us 1869 to 1948, an Indian lawyer, anti-colonial nationalist, political ethicist, who employed, you can help me with this one, Satyagraha, nonviolent resistance, to lead the successful campaign for India's independence from British rule, and later inspired movements for civil rights and freedom across the world. He advocated religious tolerance and a doctrine of ahimsa, which is non-injury to all living beings. Ahimsa. I did. All right. Pasha, it's all yours.
Oh, all right. Is it okay? Sure. All right.
so I wanted Gandhi to be visible. I'll move him here a little bit. Is that good? So thank you, Heather, for preparing that and for introducing us. Well, I don't know about the other people, but I didn't know anything about that woman. She's amazing. So my spiritual hero, Gandhi, is probably the most well-known, like in the whole world, of the three that we're focusing on. And I have no special qualifications other than my admiration and interest. I did a presentation somewhat similar to this for New Thought Center back when it was New Thought Church and we were meeting in Keaho, but I don't think any of you were there. Maybe one of our online people would have a memory of it, but most likely not. And in any case, it's a little different. Well, it's a quarter century later, and we have a different perspective. But I think Gandhi has aged well. One thing I noticed, because I actually found my old notes, and I noticed that when I did it before, it was pre-Google, pre-computer, so I have my handwritten notes. But I thought, just to refresh everybody's memory of sort of the factual part, I did print something from the computer, which I will share. Just Gandhi's life was indeed inspiring and fairly long. He lived to the age of 77. So he grew up in a home steeped in religion, and he took for granted tolerance and the doctrine of ahimsa, non-injury to all living beings. He studied law in England from 1888 to 1891, and when he completed that study in 1893, he took a job with an Indian firm in South Africa. There he became an effective advocate for Indian rights. In 1906, he first put into action satyagraha, his technique of nonviolent resistance. His success in South Africa gave him an international reputation, and in 1915, he returned to India. Within a few years, became the leader of a nationwide struggle for Indian home rule. Both India and South Africa, I believe, were part of the British Empire then, I think. Okay. By 1920, Gandhi commanded influence previously unattained by any political leader in India. He fashioned the Indian National Congress into an effective political instrument of Indian nationalism and undertook major campaigns of nonviolent resistance in the 1920s, the 1930s, and again in the 1940s. His efforts in the 1930s included his momentous March to the Sea to collect salt, which was a protest against the government monopoly. In the 1930s, he also campaigned to end discrimination against India's lower caste untouchables, Dalits, officially designated as scheduled castes, and he concentrated on educating rural India and promoting cottage industry. India achieved dominion status. It was no longer a colony in 1947, but the partition of the subcontinent into two nations, India and Pakistan, was a great disappointment to Gandhi, who had long worked for Hindu-Muslim unity. At the age of 77, he was assassinated by a Hindu extremist who disapproved of his tolerant attitude. Most of that is from the Encyclopedia Britannica. But so by way of introduction of, my part, other than encyclopedia, I would like to read remarks made by a man named Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, who was vice president of India at the time, in response to a request from UNESCO to describe the main features of Gandhi's philosophy. This is what he said. A great teacher appears once in a while. Several centuries may pass by without the advent of such a one. And that by which he is known is his life. He first lives and then tells others how they may live likewise. Such a teacher was Gandhi. Gandhi's life was rooted in India's religious tradition, with its emphasis on a passionate search for truth, a profound reverence for life, the ideal of non-attachment, and the readiness to sacrifice all for the knowledge of God. He lived his whole life in the perpetual quest of truth. Gandhi's religion was a rational and ethical one. He would not accept any belief which did not appeal to his reason, or any injunction which did not commend to his conscience. He affirmed, all men are brothers, and no human being should be a stranger to another. The welfare of all should be our aim. God is the common bond that unites all human beings. To break this bond, even with our greatest enemy, is to tear God himself to pieces. There is humanity even in the most wicked. This view leads naturally to the adoption of nonviolence as the best means of solving all problems, personal, national, and international, and suffering. His stand for the freedom of India was not based on hatred for Britain. The human mind, in all its baffling strangeness and variety, produces contrary types. Buddha, Gandhi, Nero, Hitler. It is our pride that one of the greatest figures of history lived in our generation, walked with us, spoke to us, taught us the way of civilized living. As Plato said long ago, there always are in the world a few inspired men whose acquaintance is beyond price. And this was spoken in New Delhi in August of 1958, so about a decade after Gandhi's assassination. By the way, especially for younger people, I ask your indulgence when he talks about all men are brothers and, a few inspired men whose acquaintance is beyond price. I mean, I'm old enough that when I learned, even when I studied in college, it was still a convention of language to use the masculine pronoun when you were talking about people in general, to say mankind rather than humankind. So we can't really blame Gandhi for doing this because gender inclusive language didn't really fully catch on till the 1980s. So just reinterpret it to yourself if you're thinking, well, what about the women? Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to pick up on a couple of the themes in that. So Gandhi was very committed to truth. He considered that commitment to truth to be one of his innate qualities that he was born with. already manifested it as a child, and this very long autobiography. You know, when he got to the very end of it on page 500 something, he still was equally committed to the importance of truthfulness. He said, let's see, my uniform experience has convinced me that there is no other God than truth, and a perfect vision of truth can only follow a complete realization of ahimsa, nonviolence. The other quality in himself, which Gandhi himself considered to be innate, was his feeling of unity or kinship with all kinds of people. And he had this explanation for it. A variety of incidents in my life have conspired to bring me in close contact with people of many creeds and many communities, and my experience with all of them warrants the statement that I have known no distinction between relatives and strangers, countrymen and foreigners, white and colored, Hindus and Indians of other faiths, whether Muslims, Parsis, Christians, or Jews. I may say that my heart has been incapable of making any such distinctions. I cannot claim this as a special virtue, as it is in my very nature, rather than a result of any effort on my part. But he did also acknowledge that there were certain of his qualities which were influenced by his experience of life. And two of those experiences that were very powerful for him were going to study in England and his experiences in South Africa as a lawyer. So those were, he considered sort of molding experiences. But one more thing I wanted to say about the tolerance, the feeling of accepting of all people, is that it was in line with this that he became passionately opposed to the social institution, which classified a third of the population as untouchable, according to the Indian caste system at the time. He even recalled being offended by this unfair distinction as a child. And as an adult, he called the untouchables Harijans, which translates as children of God. At the various ashrams he established, the residents, including himself, were made responsible for cleaning latrines and disposing of garbage, the unpleasant but necessary tasks which tradition had relegated to the untouchables. And he insisted that the abolition of untouchability be incorporated into the constitution of free and independent India when that finally transpired. So as far as his experience in England, he spent 3 years in London studying law, and paradoxically, this prepared him to be a formidable adversary to the British when he embarked on his campaign for Indian independence. It also inspired him with the ideals of political democracy and individual freedom, and made the blatant hypocrisy of the British more unbearable, since they claimed these things for themselves but denied them to their colonial subjects. In South Africa, he encountered legalized racism far less subtle than anything he had experienced growing up in India. And it was in South Africa that Gandhi first developed and applied his technique and philosophy of satyagraha, Literally, it means holding on to truth, and it was the term invented to describe the practice of nonviolent resistance to injustice. Gandhi used it effectively to improve the lot of Indians living in South Africa. During this period, he established a utopian community called Tolstoy Farm, where Indians of various castes and religions lived together in harmony. I was interested to learn that Gandhi had great admiration for the Russian novelist, philosopher Tolstoy, and corresponded with him during the last year of Tolstoy's life. He wrote as follows: Tolstoy's "The Kingdom of God is Within You" overwhelmed me. It left an abiding impression on me. And I just thought it was fascinating that the connections between these tremendous individuals. Gandhi also found inspiration in the writings of Thoreau and Emerson. And likewise, his contemporaries and succeeding generations, including ourselves, find inspiration in Gandhi's ideas and example. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., writing in 1953, acknowledged that debt. As the days unfolded, the inspiration of Gandhi began to exert its influence. I had come to see the early Christian doctrine of love operating through the Gandhian method of nonviolence as one of the most potent tools available to the Negro in his struggle for freedom. His influence has also been cited by Mandela in South Africa, Aristide in Haiti, Havel in the Czech Republic, Walesa in Poland, and on and on. And Albert Einstein made a tribute on the occasion of Gandhi's 70th birthday, which concluded this way: generations to come, it may be, will scarce believe that such a one as this ever in flesh and blood walked upon the earth. So this respect and reverence expressed by Einstein, King, and others, balanced by the spiritual bond Gandhi felt with Tolstoy and other inspired thinkers of the past, helped me to see it as a continuum, stretching back as well as forward. It's wonderful how these noble souls find and recognize one another, even though they're born in different countries. The barriers of time, language, custom do not present this process of transference. It's like torchbearers who carry the Olympic flame. So there's a lot more I could share, but I love Fred Rogers and I want to give him equal time. So I thank you. And I have these interesting resources. If anyone wants to borrow any of the books, I'm willing to loan them. Oh, Stephen, we were hoping to sing the neighbor song. Do you think that would be best before or after Aaron's presentation?
Oh, we could do it after. I know in the program it was requested that we do It's a Beautiful Day. I have that one queued up.
Well, what do you think, Aaron? Will you?
It's up to you guys. Why don't we get set up, and then we'll sing it right before we learn about Mr. Rogers.
Okay.
Well, somebody has to clue me in what we're.
So you're going to be.
Maybe we'll do them all. And yes, I have. Let's do the song first. And is the Bluetooth on for the phone? little louder.
Part of the singing.
You see the special thing I brought?
Are we holding hands for Mr. Rogers?
No, but can
It's
you?
called a picture.
Is it on? We're gonna sort of lead the singing
Each one
because
of
we
these
like.
little doors is a picture. Let's see, it must be on.
This is their neighbor.
Good a cappella. Okay. It's a
Beautiful day in the neighborhood.
a neighborly day in the beauty wood. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Please won't you be my neighbor? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in the neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Please won't you be my neighbor? All right, Mr. Rogers, you're on.
Sorry about that. I mean, last time I clicked on it, it played perfectly. Okay, I need to do the. Fred Rogers, commonly known as Mr. Rogers, was an American television host, author, producer, and Presbyterian minister. He was the creator, showrunner, and host of the preschool television series Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which ran from 1968 to 2001. Quite a run. Aaron?
2002. Howdy. Hi, neighbor. Hi. How are you feeling today? Is everybody feeling okay? Maybe you're feeling happy. Maybe you're feeling joy. But maybe you're feeling sad. Or maybe you're feeling mad. Whatever you're feeling, there's a way to express it. And that's what Mr. Rogers taught us. So here I am. I'm Erin Peoples. And believe it or not, I grew up in the real Mr. Rogers neighborhood. So my first part of my life, I lived in the suburbs. And I might have run across Mr. Rogers walking on the street in Squirrel Hill in a part of Pittsburgh. And then I would later, when I was 16, move there and see him and run into him more frequently. And what's interesting about running into Mr. Rogers is he was always the same. He was the same in real life as he was on his programs and at PBS, Public Broadcasting System, where he filmed his TV show, where I got to go and see a live show. So Mr. Rogers on the streets, and by happenstance, 3 different times running into him. One time I decided to just check out a new church called the Sixth Presbyterian Church. And I was way late to get in there and got to the back of the pews where the only seat was left. And I was kind of sitting down in my pew, and some of the service had already begun. And then in about 10 minutes, I started to hear this voice give part of the service. And, you know, all these heads were in front of me in the pews. And I heard this familiar voice, and I was in my 20s. And I said, looked right and I looked left, and I said to the person next to me, I said, that sounds like Mr. Rogers. And the person turned to me and said, well, it is. So I got up out of my chair. Mr. Rogers? Mr. Rogers is in church today? Well, it turned out he had been a member there in Squirrel Hill at the Presbyterian Church and was a ordained Presbyterian minister. So there was a lot of things about Fred Rogers that I didn't know. But from that point, I started recalling all the times that I had been in my little family room chair in front of the television as a child growing up. And maybe you for a minute could revisit the time that you were sitting in your chair as a little person or an adult person, and Mr. Rogers came on with the trolley, and little Daniel Tiger or X the Owl or Henrietta, and what you might have felt at the time that he was talking to you across the TV as this wonderful presence of love, unconditional love. I had asked Jamie, and she said she remembered it very vividly growing up, both her and her sister. And I had that privilege. And so when I was there at 20-some years old in the church where Mr. Rogers was giving a talk, I started to recall this deep feeling in my heart, almost like I did when you all know me whenever I met Krishna Das and Neem Karoli Baba. That same kind of deep, unconditionally loving heart that we occasionally might glimpse that unconditional place, maybe some of us more than others. So let me tell you the real deal here, because it's such a rarity to meet such a warming personality, such a universal presence of warmth and peace. So I'll tell you a little bit about Mr. Rogers. This is a great book. I gave this book to Jay Tayu for one of his birthdays, and Pasha invited me to read some pieces from it. If you want to know anything about Mr. Rogers, this is the best book, The World According to Mr. Rogers. And his wife writes a 6-page beautiful description in the foreword to her husband. And you don't even know it's her. You think somebody's talking about him that has just worshiped him his whole life. And it turns out to be his wife, Joanna Stanley, who later became Mrs. Rogers. So Fred Rogers, known as America's favorite neighbor, dedicated his life to serving children through public television as a creator, a composer. He studied at the University of Pittsburgh in the Graduate School of Child Development. He was also a composer in the neighborhood of Pittsburgh with Joe Negri. He was an ordained Presbyterian minister with the inspiration of working with children and families through television. Fred Rogers, his relentless commitment to all that is best in people led to an astonishing array of honors, from induction into the Television Hall of Fame to the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And Fred Rogers, who was known to pass away by body in 2003, who we don't really feel ever left, because some of his most revered colleagues thought of him as a bodhisattva. Really, he was like this from a child. If you read the book, he got the inspiration from a critical thing that happened kind of in his childhood where there was some criticism. And from that moment of awareness, he just made a decision that he was going to be exactly who he was, which was ultimate kindness, deepest regard for others. He actually had a habit that I adopted before I knew that he did this. Everywhere he went, when he would talk to others, he would refer to everything as we. We're going to do this. When he was filming the public television show, he wouldn't say, I brought in these instructions and we're going to do it this way. He would say, we're going to consider doing things this way. And when we go over to the classroom, we're going to go together. So he had this marvelous way of including everyone all the time as they were part of him and he was part of them. So I thought maybe to end, because we have about 5 minutes left, I'd get some volunteers to read 3 of these little marked pages. And these are all things Mr. Rogers said and was quoted for and was written down for. And a lot of times you will find him say, we this and we that. But if I could have a couple volunteers just to pick off 3, I'd like Jamie to come up. And then after that, we could have Jeff, or vice versa. We could have Jeff and then Jamie. You guys decide. And then somebody else, maybe Geerling. Or just to pick 3 of these that I have marked. And it doesn't matter. Don't read the notes I have. Just go ahead and.
Discovering the truth about ourselves is a lifetime's work, but it's worth the effort. I hope that you'll remember, even when you're feeling blue, that it's like you I like. It's you yourself. It's you. It's you I like. There's something unique about being a member of a family that really needs you in order to function well. One of the deepest longings a person can have is to feel needed and essential.
There is no normal life that is free of pain. It is the very wrestling with our problems that can be the impetus of our growth. For Pasha, I hope you're proud of yourselves for the times you said yes, when all it meant was extra work for you and seemingly helpful only to somebody else. Thank you, mahalo, Aaron. That one was for Pasha. Okay, I'll do one more. The great poet Rainier Maria Rilke wrote, "Be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart and learn to love the questions themselves." Okay.
One other person that would like to read Mr. Rogers or Mr. Rogers? Candy? Yeah.
A high school student wrote to ask, what was the greatest event in American history? I can't say. However, I suspect that like so many great events, it was something very simple, very quiet, with little or no fanfare, such as someone forgiving someone else for a deep hurt that eventually changed the course of history. The really important great things are never center stage of life's dramas. They're always in the wings. That's why it is so essential for us to be mindful of the humble and the deep rather than the flashy and the superficial.
You had a standing ovation. Real quick, because we have a couple minutes left. The values we care about the deepest and the movements within society that support those values command our love. When those things that we care about so deeply become endangered, we become enraged. And what a healthy thing that is. Without it, we would never stand up and speak out for what we believe. Okay, this one was for all the men in the house. When I was a boy, I used to think that strong meant having big muscles, great physical power. But the longer I live, the more I realize that real strength has much more to do with what is not seen. Real strength has to do with helping others. Okay, and the last one I'm going to read today that Mr. Rogers said, development comes from within. Nature does not hurry, but advances slowly. And this is a picture of Mr. Rogers. Just real quick, I would like to tell you something that happened to me before I end this. I have to. You know, it's my chance, right, to really give you the goods on Mr. Rogers. So I did run into him in Pittsburgh quite a few times and was so in awe. But this is kind of a mystical miracle that happened to me. I had visited Omega Institute to go to see Krishna Das at Ecstatic Chant. And it's when he reintroduced me to Maharaji Neem Karoli Baba. And I realized that Neem Karoli Baba was so much of unconditional love because of an experience I had with Krishna Das. I was having some trouble. And so I took the journey back from New York to Pennsylvania to Pittsburgh. And something happened to me that was very special. I had received some talking in my ear in Hindi because of meeting Krishna Das and telling him about what was happening for me. And Neem Karoli Baba began to speak in my ear as I arrived home to help me deal with what was going on there. And he remained there with me and said many things. But one of the things he said when I was in my journeys in and around Pittsburgh was, Mr. Rogers is the guru of Pittsburgh. Don't you know? And I was said, whoa, it never occurred to me. And he was like, you better go get some of his books from the library and start singing some of his songs and reading and listening to him because he's got the bones of what we need. So a couple weeks went by and our art festival was being held in the city of Pittsburgh. And I got on a bus and I went to the arts festival before it began. And I went down to the Three Rivers where the Three Rivers meet at the point. And I was standing there not knowing exactly why I came. I thought maybe the arts festival was in town. It wasn't. But something dawned on me that I came there for a reason. Within 30 seconds, the most strongest rain shower, thunderstorm, started slamming down all over the place. And I was wide out in the open. And Maharaji was still having some conversations with me. And he was saying, okay, did you bring your raincoat? Did you bring an umbrella? And next thing I know, there's a man standing within 30, 40 feet from me. And he starts screaming at me. He's the only person at the point in the heart of Pittsburgh, except for me. And he says, hey, over there, don't you remember what Mr. Rogers said? Safety first. Get out of the rain. So that's how I link up Neem Curly Baba and Mr. Rogers. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Aaron. It makes Mr. Rogers more of a hero to me than ever. It's funny. It's like I definitely appreciate the lives of all three people more than I did before. And I'm going to read the coming up announcements for New Thought real quick, and then we'll pass the coal bowl. And I hope you're inspired to make a good offering today. Our Sunday service is at 10 a.m. in person here at the center or by live stream. Check for your YouTube link video. Next 3 Sundays, on the 16th, Dr. Susan Gregg, How to Let Go of the Past and Have a Magical Life. Music by Benjamin. 10:23, Mira Ojala, Cultivating Hope During Challenging Times. On 10:30, it's Brittany Farmer, Death and Rebirth, A Visit with Ancestors. Music by Kamana Lighthawk. Our weekly events from Mondays 5 to 6, Tai Chi class with Jin Al Wang. Right now, I guess they're on hold and they'll resume on 10/24. Tuesday, starting October 18th, 4 to 5:30, Cancer Support Group, facilitated by Mira Ojar. I think she's actually leading it, not just a facilitator. Wednesdays from 4 to 6 through October 26th, a dream group facilitated by Lindsay Roth. Suggested donation, $5 per meeting. Monthly events, last Sunday of the month, produce giveaway. I was going to bring some today, but I forgot it at the last minute. Next event is October 30. First Sunday of the month, pre-service healing meditation with Crystal Bowles, 8:30 to 9 a.m., Hanua Room. Next one will be on November 6th. We always need volunteers, service opportunities, greeters, setup, cleanup, tech help, people to help with workshop facilitators. You help with the logistic of events, from setting up chairs to keeping track of what's happening. To volunteer for anything, click reply to the NTCH newsletter. If you'd like to be in our guest book, or sign up via the website. And I'd like to ask, are there any more announcements from the audience here? Heather, do you? Yes, Pasha.
So this announcement concerns Heather because she signed her membership form to become a member of New Thought Center in February at the time of our annual meeting, but it was a virtual meeting. So she was invited to join us for the birthday Sunday and receive her certificate then, but she was in California and hasn't quite mastered how to be in 2 places at once yet. So she's here now. So Heather, congratulations. Thank you. What a privilege. Thank you. So happy that you wanted to come into closer association with New Thought. We're so grateful to have you as a member. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Heather speaks so well, doesn't she? Yeah. It's good speaker. Oh, now it's time for the coal bowl offering. If you'd like to come up one at a time or all together. And we're passing now. See, I'm out of step. I'm on time.
Are you going to try the music again?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. And it's very lively.
while we pass the cold bowl, if you were in Iran at Tahereh's home, she would have served you tea and sweets. So I'll be passing this around in Iranian hospitality so that you can enjoy what Fred Rogers might think of as superficial, but bringing more and more joy into our lives and remembering heaven on earth to the extent that we can create it. And the flowers as well chose to be here this morning. Each one was asked if they'd like to be on our beautiful center table. And each one said, yes, please, bring me, bring me. And so before you leave today, if you could please say hello to them and honor them.
Don't you wish it were true? All right. And now, I don't know, we'll attempt to play the closing song, Hawaii Aloha. This is a long one. You don't have to stay for the whole thing, but it's just an incredible collection of singers and musicians from all over Hawaii. That was a wonderful video on YouTube, actually. Stephen, are we going to sing I don't know, maybe this is an ad first. Yeah. Unfortunately, the sound quality is not coming through very well.
Keep going.